this is lesson 6-4, number 40, and the question's about determining normality. So you're trying to determine whether something's normal, whether the data is normally distributed, bell-shaped or not. There's three ways that we're going to do that. First thing we're going to do is create a histogram. And just look at the histogram and say, yeah, that data looks bell-shaped, it looks normal, or no, it doesn't. Okay, it's going to be kind of an opinion. Not real scientific, but it's one way to determine whether the data looks normal or not. Because there's going to be a lot of things we're going to do in the rest of the class that whether the data is normal or not will determine on whether we can use a certain process in some of our other topics that we're going to discuss. Secondly, we're going to check for skewness. We're going to use something called the Pearson index. And that will help us determine whether a set of data is significantly skewed left or significantly skewed right or not significantly skewed. And the third thing we're going to do is check for outliers using a formula. All right? So if you, we're using the TI-84 plus here, or TI-84. Just to review this quick, if you push stat and then enter, you'll get your lists. You're going to take all your data and put it in one of your lists. I'm putting it in list 1. All right, here's the problem we're doing today. It's on page 319 of your textbooks. The data shown represent the cigarette tax in cents for 30 randomly selected states. Check for normality. So in one state, the cigarette tax is 3 cents. Another, it's 100 cents. Another, it's 20 cents, etc. Is this data bell-shaped? Is it normal? That's our question. So what we're going to do is create a histogram. To do that, you push second y equals, which is stat plot on the TI-84 plus. Second y equals. Right now you can see all my plots are turned off. I want to turn this first plot on, so I push enter. Push enter again to turn it on. I go down and I make sure this histogram is highlighted. I push enter to make sure that's highlighted. My X list is list 1. I want to make sure that I have my data in list 1. My data was in list 2. I come down here and hit second 2. So this stat plot is ready to turn on so we can see a histogram. The other thing you have to make sure you do is set your window. We want to make sure we set our X and Y axis so the histogram shows up. So I go to Window, top of your calculator, and I look at my data. My data are my X values. I want to make sure my X min is lower than my lowest X value. I want to make sure my X max is higher than my highest X value. So as I look at my list of numbers, the lowest number that I see on number 40 is 3. The highest number I see is 111. So when I draw my histogram, I'm going to put right here, I need to make sure my X min is less than 3. I'm going to make my X min 0. I want to make sure my X max is bigger than 111. I'm going to go 120. That way all my data will fit on my graph. The next thing, the X scale is pretty important with the histogram. The X scale determines how wide your graph is going to be. How wide each bar is going to be on the histogram. So if I want the first bar to go from 0 to 10, I set my X scale at 10. If I want my first bar to go from 0 to 15, I set my X scale at 15. If I want it to go from 0 to 20, I set it at 20. All right, so I don't know, let's set it at 15. So my first bar will go from 0 to 15, and 15 to 30, 30 to 45. I'm going to run out of room. Let me retry that here. I'm going to do this. This is 60, this is 30 and 90. Okay, there's 15. So each mark is 15. Again, that means X scale of 15. Now, one error that's common, people will set this like at 1, which would mean you'd have to have 120 bars on the screen. Calculator can't handle that, you get an error. So if you get an error, one thing you might do is try to make your X scale larger so your bars are wider so the graph can graph it. X min and Y min and Y max. On a histogram, the Y axis is your frequency. So like how many numbers are going to follow each category. Well, I only entered a total of 30. I only entered a total of 30 numbers. There's no way I can have more than 30 numbers in any one category. In fact, it's probably going to be a lot less. Okay? I'm guessing I won't have more than maybe 10 numbers in any given category. So I'm going to set my Y min at 0, my Y max at 10, and I can always adjust later. So Y min at 0, Y max of 10. Y scale of 1 will just mean we'll put a mark every 1 unit on the Y axis. So any questions about setting up the calculator? All right, we hit graph. That's what you should get. Now, there's probably some errors out there if a lot of you are doing it with me. Anybody get an error on theirs?
Oh, it came off, then it gave me an error.
Okay. So it's just a couple things to check. All right, if you get errors, it's going to happen. You need to know how to troubleshoot. Go to Window. Make sure that you have these numbers in here again. Okay. Another thing to check, make sure you only have the one stat plot turned on. You can check that by pushing Y equals. You push Y equals. Whichever plots are highlighted are the ones you have turned on. So you only want plot 1 highlighted. You can turn them on and off by using your arrows and hitting enter up here. Another thing that could happen is, if you set it up to graph list 1, you want to make sure your data is in list 1. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then I'll come around and try to help you with calculators here in a minute. So there's my graph. The other thing you can do is you hit trace. If you hit trace, that's showing me that there are 5 cigarette taxes that are between 0 and 15 cents. So my first bar goes up to 5. And I'm going to have you draw this on your paper. Okay? So it doesn't have to be perfectly neat, but sketch this on your paper for number 40. I hit my right arrow. My second bar has a frequency of 8 between 15 and 30. So 8's about up in here. Just get it close. My next one is a little bit lower. I'm just going to get it close. Because we're not so concerned about the exact